Oh, we have a little bit of time for conversation and discussion. This seems to be a very helpful time for clarifying our practice, and so please, if you have anything you'd like to bring up, feel free. Yes.
I feel like I can imagine what the person who wrote the email might want to ask.
Yeah.
Which is, okay, let's say I resolve the problem of my mind, the forces behind the destruction of life on Earth, and like awakened, but that does not seem clear to me immediately how that then prevents the destruction of life on Earth.
Mm-hmm. Good. So one of the things that the person who wrote it might have meant is a person could get to the point when they have become free in their own minds from the forces that threaten life on Earth, that are destroying life on Earth, but it still isn't clear, even if that were to happen, that I would be able to prevent, or that I would prevent the continuing destruction by others. Is that correct? Yes. Well, that's very reasonable. That's its own skill set, and it's difficult. So, yes, a person would need to work on that also. And that can take a long time. It can be very hard. We see that no one has managed it yet in world history. We continue to go down this path, and so that part of it is very, very challenging. But I'd like to say two things about it. One is that the challenge there is one of power. So the challenge there is, does this person who has resolved these problems and therefore become wise and has cultivated the intention to be of benefit, therefore has love, does this wise and loving person who's clear about the truth and also has the intention to be of benefit to all beings, does this person also have power? Does this person have the power to change the world? Do they have the power to change the way people live? This is a very important question. It's extremely meaningful. What sort of power would it be that a wise and loving person would have? Right? Do they have some sort of power over others to force them to do what is right, even if they would choose otherwise? Maybe. Do they have the power to encourage others to explore so they can discover an even more accurate sense of what they truly want? Do they have the power to influence this basic force that's running the world, that being the way human beings look at things? What sort of power would it be? This is very important for us to explore. And I would not recommend that we take this question lightly. I think it's absolutely central to the spiritual path. How is it that we give people with power, wisdom, and love? How is it that we give people with wisdom and love power? How is that done? And it is a challenge, and that's what we have seen. I would say if there's anything we've seen in human history, it's that. So that's the first thing I'd say about it. Does that make sense so far? The second thing, though, is one of the one of the forces that causes the destruction of life on Earth is the sense of self. Okay? Perceiving things in terms of self. And within that, in particular, perceiving things in terms of inside and outside is one of the major problems in the world. So, as we've often said, it's very rare that a person wants to cause harm to the world. What's much more common is that the way that we perceive things holds myself, holds the local, to be more important, to be a special case. And in attempting to be of benefit locally to ourselves, or to a self could be a family, even a nation, say, what we identify with can change. It's actually extremely important to know that it does change all the time. In any case, we have the sense that there's a local entity, we identify with something, and that has an inside and an outside, and we are attempting to be of benefit on the inside. We want to be of benefit to quote, ourselves, to those we love, for example. We are attempting to do good. There's not malintent. There is good intent. But because we've looked at things in that way, we externalize harm, in general, not intentionally. Sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, but in any case, it happens. And that harm may be even greater than the good. And in fact, it may be so great that it actually is even worse for even this in-group. So, for example, human beings are very worried about destroying life on the planet, and the main argument I hear human beings make is that, well, that will be of great harm to us. So we're willing to destroy the planet up to the point when it is harmful to us. But then we have externalized too much, and it begins to become internalized again. And we wouldn't want that. Now that, of course, is good, that we're seeing that the barrier isn't so clear after all. But it's even better to see through that barrier entirely. The reason I bring all this up is that if one were to make the claim, I am enlightened, but the rest of you aren't, which is why there are so many problems, then one is still seeing things in terms of this inside and outside, self and other. Instead of that, one may, not necessarily, but one may consider that it is through the complete resolution of clinging, self-centeredness, this unskillful awareness that I am liberated. The complete resolution of that. As you may know, in terms of Buddhism, the Mahayana makes a big deal out of this point, and says that to only strive for your own awakening isn't the path to true awakening. It works. Now, it's actually one of the precepts in the Mahayana that you may not say that it doesn't work to do that. It does work, actually, in its own way. But one just says, well, but that isn't complete awakening. That's all. It isn't that this isn't awakening. It is. Very important that that point is made. Nobody's saying that it's wrong. It's just saying it's incomplete. Okay? So the Mahayana says it needs to be complete. But actually, when I look at the deep practitioners of any of these traditions, they're all pretty much the same. Because they're all simply aware that this direct experience, you don't have to interpret it in terms of self and other at all. You just work with this experience. That's it. That's all. You don't need to know more than that. You don't need to explain away more than that. You can just work with it here. And so that is actually very empowering. Because it means that we can know that in the same way that this power, this mysterious power that we have to purify our own mind right now, it's amazing, isn't it, that we have that power? You see what I'm saying? It's incredible. It may not seem incredible. I think sometimes we just take it for granted. But actually, we do have that power. We did the exercise. You can do the exercise. You may say, but I can't do it completely and perfectly. Well, okay, but you can do it to a certain extent. You can get better at that. That's very significant. And what's amazing about it is that you realize that that kind of power is power. That's amazing. That is what we're talking about when we say power. And then it's a matter of that growing and growing. So it doesn't have to be something that may or may not happen after enlightenment. Is all this relevant, helpful, anything that you were asking that I didn't speak to?
I don't know. Your answer kind of somehow inverts, like, ways of seeing in a way that makes it hard to connect to the perspective the original question was coming from.
Right. That's true.
I don't know if that's...
Well, I think what we're talking about is, that's what this talk is about. This talk is about, if you hold a certain perspective, then you're going to come to certain conclusions, and certain behaviors will result. If you hold a different perspective, you'll come to other conclusions, and other behaviors will result. So this view, this basic view of things, is what it all comes down to. What is your perspective on things? Around here, we have our interpersonal issues, and we say, this person did this, and I don't like them, this person did that, and I do like them. But something that I found is that it's very rare that the issue is the issue. There's usually another issue. It's not the issue that's being discussed, and in general, that is, different people have different perspectives on things. And so, to clarify people's perspectives, we're talking to a very, very skillful manager of people in the business world. And he was saying it's almost always the case that when people disagree, they're not actually disagreeing about what they're arguing about. They're disagreeing about their basic assumptions. And to uncover those assumptions is how you resolve the conflict. It's very difficult, oftentimes. It's easier to just argue about what you did and what they didn't do and all of that. But to dig down and see, this is my perspective, and if I'm going to hold on to that, then all of this is just set. That's a challenge, and so this talk is about understanding the importance of clarifying our perspective on things and seeing how much power it really has. How much power our views have, especially our shared views, especially views that we share with others, allowing us to work in concert without even knowing that we are or why we are. Does that make sense? If we see things the same way as other people, we're going to act harmoniously with them, whatever that may mean. Yes? So we all, just as the simple and most famous, easiest example, we all believe in money. It's imaginary, people made it up, it's not a self-existing object, but we all believe in it together. And that means that we can behave in incredibly sophisticated ways that are harmonious, at least within those who believe in money, that encourage people to believe in money more, because once you buy in, then you have to buy in more and more. You're given power by the belief if you give your power to the belief. But the power that the belief gives you is power within its own realm. So it's very advanced, you could say, in its ability to manipulate our behavior. And so we have this practice so that we can see that thing which is actually running the world. That being how we see things, our views, and in particular our shared ways of seeing things, our intersubjective views. So it's natural that I would, given this talk, that I would answer by just offering a different perspective. Because we really have this sense, that when I have my perspective, there's a perspective that's on. So there's a thing, and I have a perspective on it. And everyone follow what I just said is actually really important. We have the sense that there's a thing out there, and I have a perspective on it. But there's the thing, but I have a perspective on it. And maybe I'll change my perspective on it. Or I'll change to another perspective on it. But there's still a thing there that exists on its own, regardless of your perspective. And then you can take different perspectives on it. There's that sense. I would ask everyone to carefully examine that. See if you can find the thing that's really there. Self-existent regardless of how you look at it. What is the thing that is actually really there? Regardless of your perspective, regardless of your view. And as we do that, we begin to see how incredibly powerful our views are. How incredibly powerful our ways of seeing things are. It's amazing.
This seems maybe dumb, but it's in regards to this of and I know it is just my perspective. Can you speak to this question of how can a person see a thing as it is? I just can't even grapple with the idea of not having a perspective.
Yeah.
As human, I perceive. I am not a thing. I am a person who sees things.
Yes, right. Exactly. So this is a good question. I'm going to try to say it back to you, because I heard it in a few different parts. But the question is, how is it possible to explore not having a perspective?
Yeah.
How is it possible to not, for example, be a human being who is seeing a thing? It seems that if a person is seeing a thing, then the thing will be seen according to the perspective of the person. And there isn't a way out of perspective here, so how might one do it? Yes? Great, it's a great question. first and foremost is whatever way in which you're seeing, however you're seeing, throw that away. Just like that. Okay? So just throw it away. Just turn your attention away from it with tireless energy. So you have a certain perspective, just don't pay attention to that. Get rid of that. That's the first answer, but I don't know how useful that answer is. It's just, it's good that you have it in case it's ever useful. But another way to work with it is that, so let's take what you said as an example. It seems that I as a human will have a perspective on the thing that I'm perceiving. And so with that you can search for a certain way of understanding, framing the situation. Basically, I am a human. How might you let go of that identity, that way of looking at things? And the good news is that this is very tangible. In the beginning and throughout, it's very tangible. You can identify, I bet you can identify the constituents of the sense I am human. There's probably some thoughts, probably some feelings. You identify those things. And then you identify those things as what they are. They are thoughts and feelings. And that is what they are. They're not a perspective. They're thoughts and feelings. And by seeing them exactly as they are, they lose their perspectiveness. Okay? So what is this like? Well, the classic example is, it's as if, did we get the wheelbarrow fixed? Wheelbarrow fixed? Yes? Yes. Okay. It was broken, right? What?
Yes.
Yes. Did, say, the wheel come off of it, for example? Close enough. Sort of. Great. So we had a wheelbarrow, the wheel came off of it. Okay? Prior to it breaking, there were handles and a container, what is that called? Bowl?
A barrow.
Barrow? Really?
Barrow.
Oh, that's good. The barrow. I love it. This is such a good example. So, and there's a wheel. Wheel, barrow, and maybe a few other parts. So, that's great. And then there was still a wheel and a barrow. But strangely, there was no wheelbarrow. Isn't that weird? It's so strange. Just by taking the wheel off of the barrow, you have a wheelbarrow. Isn't that amazing? By taking it apart, by taking the wheelbarrow apart, the wheelbarrowness is just gone. You wonder if it was there. It's so easy to get rid of it. Yes, you didn't destroy anything except a perspective, except a way of looking at constituents. The same way, if you have thoughts and emotions and you put them together, then you get a perspective. But if you see the thoughts and emotions as thoughts and emotions, then the perspectiveness is just gone. It's hard to say where it went. Was it there? I don't know. It's weird. So we have the sense I am human, and yet there are constituents to that. And if you could say take them apart just by observing them one by one, then that identity falls away.
This is actually very well known. It's a very well known phenomenon. If you simply identify assumptions as they are, they lose their power. Okay? So, just as an example, if you call, let's say that we're talking about Christianity. If you say, well, yes, Christianity is a very good belief system. It's a fine belief system. I don't have any problem with it as a belief system. You are you're sounding, well, it's a passive-aggressive statement, isn't it? You sound kind, but it's actually an act of war. Yes? Does that make sense?
Because Christianity is a belief, and so to say it's fine is to not believe it, which is...
No, to say that it's a belief system is to say that it's not reality. Okay? I think it's what a lot of people have. It's really dangerous to say that something is a belief, right? So if we say the physical universe, that's a very interesting, that's a very good, actually fine belief system. Right? It's a perfectly good, it's fine that you believe that there's a physical universe. That's great. I'm not against that. Yes? Just to have the belief that there is a physical world with matter in it. It's a very good belief system. It's quite sophisticated, isn't it? It's in a certain way seems nice, but it's actually an act of war. Because you're questioning something that people think is real, but you can identify the fact that if you pay attention, all you find is a belief system. Okay? And I'm going to take this down really far because it matters. You said you're a human being who sees things certain way, right? So one part of that is that you have these eyes and these ears and this body. You also have this mind, but you have these physical senses. And we have the belief that those are trustworthy sources of information. And it's because we trust those sources of information that we have come to the conclusion that there really is actually, really, a physical world. Because they observed. But we also, even if you're a materialist, you still, a modern scientific type, you still acknowledge, well, these eyes and ears and body and everything evolved. It just, it won. It was the thing that could acquire resources. The criterion for its maintenance was not truth. It was just survival. It replicated. And we all are aware that truth and lies both replicate. Yes? And so the way of seeing according to these eyes and ears and such is already an interesting belief system. It's already that. It's already a perspective on things. And so what happens as we do this is that we learn how to draw our attention away from belief system, from the constituents of our perspectives. Yes? By identifying them as constituents of our perspectives. And it gets more and more challenging as we go, you could say, down in depth. So at first you have certain ideas like, oh, that person was such a jerk for saying that to me. Okay? It's relatively easy. That's already pretty hard, I know. It's already hard. It's relatively easy to notice this is just a thought and an emotion and there's nothing in it, and so I'm going to set that aside for now and return to some other thought about how I can't possibly meditate. So that thought is hard. I mean, I really can't meditate. The fact that I think I can't meditate is proof right now hard, C, it's thoughts, emotions, and then you return to something deeper. Let's just jump ahead and say your breath. So now you're attending to your breath, and you have successfully removed your attention from many, many layers of assumption, perception, belief. Does that make sense? We're not claiming that you've now reached some kind of ultimate truth, but we are claiming that you have successfully drawn your attention away from many of these perspective and assumptions that you're talking about how I do it. Well, you have done it. So now you know how to do it, because you did it. So we know you know how to do it since you did it. You can't say you can't do it, you did it. Then you apply precisely the same thing, again, to your breath. And you draw your attention away from it by breaking it up into its constituent parts and then letting them go. And then you don't have a breath anymore. And you do it with your body and your mind and the entire world. And the question is then, what is that? What is that when you've set aside your eyes and your ears and your body and your mind, your emotions, your beliefs, your assumptions, all perspectives, every way that you see anything? When all of that is set aside, what is that? That's the question. That cannot be a lie. Because all lying has ceased. If it hasn't, then great. Identify that, let that go. But when all lying has ceased, you're left with what? It's not a lie. What is it? That is the process of cutting through each next perspective. It can be, they are this way, I am this way, I am this. Eyes, ears, all of it. Each next part is let go of, let go of, let go of, let go of, let go of. And there's less and less. There's just less and less. And it's only reasonable that there would ultimately be a nothing. Yes? So most of us try to think more and more, know more and more, believe more and more, have more and more positions that are more and more sophisticated. It's reasonable that goes out and out forever. Yes? You can just keep on adding on. But if you go in the other direction, so you can try to go in that direction for truth, and there's no end. But there's an end to the direction of less. It's zero. There's a point at which you're holding on to nothing. There's a point at which you're seeing nothing. Nothing at all. And of course, even if you're seeing a blank screen or something, that's not nothing, that's a blank screen. When all of these forms of consciousness have completely ceased, it's reasonable that such a thing is available, right? You can keep on trying to hold more stuff and try forever. But if you have the goal of putting the things down that you're holding, it's reasonable that you could get there. You could get there. It's just reasonable. These are just metaphors, but still, they're reasonable metaphors. And so that is what we are working on here. And I claim, it has been claimed, that that is completely trustworthy. It cannot be mistaken, because there's no mistaking there. You can't be selfish, because there is no self being there. It can't be greedy, it can't be hateful. It can't be wrong, because those are all fabrications. Those are all consequences of ways of looking at things, but when all of that's gone, what is it? We're here to directly discover that, and then, in living according to it, give a solution to